Hello, 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 dear friends.
Hey,
I am sitting right beside Ms. Crystal Sanford Brown. Hey, Crystal.
hey.
And welcome to our second soft opening of two trauma survivors walking each other home. And here's the truth. Crystal and I met and connected and became sisters because we have had unspeakable things happen in the past, and we have discovered that speaking them out,
Mhm.
not with resentment, not with blame or shame, but instead by saying, this is my truth. I am here to stop denying it. I'm here to accepting it, to accept it. That's what we're about. And what we want to be sure every program is that everyone who comes here feels welcomed and safe. And
Yeah,
welcomed and safe means that if at any point anything we're talking about feels like, ooh, oh dear, I don't want to go there today, or oh dear, I feel, and this is, I'm speaking for myself, I feel too fragile. I feel too vulnerable to talk about physical abuse today. I just don't want to listen. That is okay. We respect your boundaries 100% and invite you to do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, so that if that means taking a break, if that means having a glass of water to sip on, if that means standing up and shaking things out, we support you 100%. And we'll probably be doing the same thing. We also have learned that in the United States, there is something called a warm line for trauma survivors. It's warm line for people who can get triggered by the change of light, by the presence of a large person, by a sound, or by a memory of a sadness. And so, what we're doing is making it clear on the screen that there is a number that you can call that goes across the United States. So, if at some point you're feeling like, yeah, I need to talk with somebody, there are actually other trauma survivors who are not there to judge us. They're there to say, hello, we've been through this too. You need a break. You're in the middle of a podcast. It's okay. I'm glad you're here. I want to listen. Tell me what's going on. And so, Crystal, how can people access that information?
I will put it in the chat because right now it's not up. But
Okay.
yeah, it's the 800 number. Um, as Holly Elissa stated, no judgment. And they are there if you just need someone to listen or someone to talk with, you have that support. Because I know sometimes I could be listening to a song and it may trigger, or hearing a word from someone. So I know how to do that self care, which is really beneficial.
And I hear what Crystal's saying, and I'm going to tell you that there are some times, even though I know self care, I forget self
Yeah.
care. And so it's okay if whatever you might be comfortable, I might be comfortable the whole time, or I might find myself saying, oh dear, I'm having trouble breathing. I'm having trouble breathing, and I need to talk about that because I know what can cause a panic attack. And I want to just say that out loud. That what we've learned, my friends, is that sharing about this in a safe, welcoming place is something that is beneficial to us all. But we need to work together to make this a safe place. So I'm wondering what happened with Crystal. Can't see Crystal. I'm just seeing me. But I'm glad. I hope Crystal, there she is coming back home.
I'm
Okay.
still here. I'm getting the information to
Oh, okay,
put.
honey. Do what you got to do. And what I'd
I'm
like to
still.
do, Chris, while you're doing
Mhm.
that, is I'll introduce the topic for today
Okay.
and
Sounds
invite
good.
people to be reflecting on it. Okay, friends, last week we talked about entitlement. We are always focused on having a better life, having happiness, having a, our life back as trauma survivors, because for many of us, our lives were taken away. As children, we became caregivers, we became parentified, adults, little kids who were like cooking the meals, little kids who were like cheering up the depressed mama, little kids who were making sure the younger kids were safe if dad was drinking. We did all that stuff. And as a result, we often lost our childhoods. And so, what we want to talk about today is our ability, capacity, desire, and ways of truly playing. I want to invite you to consider, as a trauma survivor or as a person that lives with and works with trauma survivors or works with children who are traumatized, how do you feel about playing? I mean, really cutting loose and playing. How do you feel about being vulnerable when you're playing? How do you feel about taking risks when you're playing? How do you feel about letting your hair down when you play? And honestly, my friends, having control, whatever that means to you or to me, is something that trauma survivors from early on fear letting go of. Because if I let go of control, the dangers that exist in my unsafe environment might come and get me. And so it's no surprise. I'm going to read this to you. One of the promises to trauma survivors, promise 7 of all things. I mean, don't you think we would know how to play? Well, never mind judging ourselves, because here's what Promise 7 says. Promise 7 to trauma survivors says, we will learn how to play and how to have fun in our lives. Now, what is that going on there, Crystal? Why are they telling us we will learn how to play? Isn't that something we all just know? What's your feeling about that, sweetie?
Oh no. Um, as children who are, I look at typical and atypical. I put myself in the atypical category. Typical means that they had no drama, they had no trauma, they had no issues. So their play was never interrupted. The engagement was there. Um, they may not have been able to do what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it. However, they had opportunities to play. I remember someone telling me when I was a little older, and the person said, "Hi." The
Hey, Nick.
person said, you are now doing what a teenager would do. And this is upon my first divorce. And it was like a freedom came about to me where I wasn't responsible for making cookies for this um siblings class. I wasn't responsible for making sure all of dad's shirts were ironed and pressed, and no negativity to my parents at all. However, I felt I was the third parent.
And you
Well,
were. And
yeah,
you were,
I
sweetie.
are at 16 years of age, but that car wasn't solely for me. It was to take this sibling to Girl Scout and stay there with that sibling, to take my brother to the mall to get wherever he needed. And if it was slacks and they were too long, it was just presumed that once we reached home, I was going to tailor it because I had that skill.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So I hear you, sweetie. And I want to say hello to Nick. I'm so glad to see
I,
you. Wow.
Yeah.
I am so glad to finally. I've been following you for years, and we know, and it's so beautiful to speak in person. And I'm just so blessed to be in your company because you're an amazing lady.
Oh, Nick, you're very kind,
Yeah.
and I want you to meet Crystal, who's one of us in terms of a person who lost a big part of childhood because we were so busy taking care of everybody else. And the truth is, we lose a big part of adulthood because
Yeah.
and Nick, you know this really well, what it's like to make sure that everybody else is cared for, everybody else is safe, everybody else is having memorable moments. And where are we in the midst? What have you learned? If you want to share, you can. You do not have to, because our topic here today, Nick, is the whole problem and question of those of us that were traumatized not having enough childhood that we got to play enough ourselves. We know how to help other people play, but we didn't get to play. And so one of the promises to trauma survivors, which I read just as you were coming on, is this one. Promise 7, we will learn how to play and have fun in our lives. Isn't that amazing that we need to be told we learn how to play? Does that surprise you, Nick?
Yes and no, from many, many aspects, because I think as children, when we are traumatized, play is our only outlet. And I've written a beautiful story, actually, which I want to, if I have time, to share with you later. But it's my thing as a child, because as you know, I'm passionate about childhood play. I couldn't wait to get away from adults. I just couldn't wait. It was like, as soon as I got up in the morning, wasn't allowed to go downstairs until you were told you can come downstairs, wasn't allowed to do this. And another story I've written is like, once I could fly those doors open, it was bye-bye, you crazy adults. I can't wait to just be in nature, roaming around with my friends. And to be honest, play for me was being away from adults. It was being to explore the wonder of the world around you, without any adults going, you can't do this, you can't do that, and not having any responsibility for anybody apart from yourself and the people that you're with, because you would just join that together. So in a way, from an adult's perspective, yeah, they did my head in as a child. But once I could break away free from those adults, in a way, you became crazy, if that makes sense. It's, I don't know how to be. I don't know what to do. And even my friends would come up to me now and go, you were frigging crazy, girl. You were well crazy. But it was because it was just that spontaneous freedom. Do you know what I mean? Right. But it's like, but I don't know how to be. But you work that out within safe people. And
I'm gonna just add in right there, Nick, to what you're saying, because I really hear you. For many of us traumatized kids, being with adults was not a safe place. And the only way to find safety was to get away and have our own space. My mother told me I learned to walk early, I learned to talk early, and I thought maybe she's giving me a compliment. When I asked her about it, she said, oh, no, it's just because you had older siblings and they taught you how to do these things. And I said to her, wait a minute. Are you saying that Lynn, who was younger than Karen, walked and talked faster than Karen? And my mother said, oh, I guess she didn't. But the point I'm getting to here is I knew that my identity through play, through the out of doors, through being beside a brook, through swimming in a lake, I knew my identity waited for me out there, and it was not safe for me to bring out my identity in the presence of adults. Why? Because I would be judged as inadequate. I already was. Being a kid was not possible. I was parentified from day one. My mother was mentally ill, and it was my job to take care of her. And I remember talking with a trauma therapist who said to me, that was an impossible burden to put on a child. And Nick and Crystal, it took me years to be able to say, you're right, because I did it well. I got my mother to play when she was starting to go into a nervous breakdown or a depression. I could get her to sing with me. I could get her to dance with me. I could get her to come outside in the springtime and do the cartwheel that she could do. I couldn't because I'd already been physically and sexually abused. And so I was very unsafe to do backward dives or to do cartwheels because I felt out of control. But my mother was able to do a cartwheel. So what I'm saying here is I hear you loud and clear. And Crystal, I want to hear you on this too, that when we got outside without the adults, we were free to play. And yet, Nick, you've just raised a second issue, which is did we have any, I know the term today is regulation, but did I have anybody helping me understand how play matters? How my interest in a gyroscope and its fanciful way, how might that lead me to learn about things called physics? Did I care about physics? No, but did I want to know how things could float? You bet. So there's another edge, Nick, that you've raised for us, which is how do we stay? And I'm not, Crystal and I use different terms. I'm not atypical or typical. I am a trauma survivor, and that's who I am. Many people are, many people aren't. But I don't want to compare. I'm not saying Crystal's got it right. I'm just saying, speaking for me, I don't want to compare myself with what anybody else might say is normal. Because my
Yeah.
life, my normal is normal for me. And the normal for me was play was crucial, just like you, Nick. Play was crucial. But I had to be by myself or with peers or with animals out in nature. I would rather have spent the night under a tree, under a lilac bush,
And I must
beside a stream than in that house. I just want to ask Crystal, is this making sense to you from the standpoint of freedom to play? Because it sounds like you didn't have so much.
Well, I did, Holly, Elissa, and Nick. I did, but it wasn't in the sense that aligned with my friends. So, my friends may have had more freedom where they could go to events alone. If I went to an event, I had to take my younger sister, and that was from a young age, which meant I was, she was accompanying me along with the diaper bag, and I can remember wanting to go. What was the name of this movie? It was out in the late 70s or early 80s. And I wanted to go because my high school friends were going, and my dad said, "Oh, your brother has to go with you." So it was always either I was protecting someone or someone was protecting me. So it wasn't like, where you talk about, Holly Elissa and Nick, you talk about this freedom of just going and being, oh no, I wouldn't have ever been able to rest under a tree. Yeah.
Can I just say though, it was, to be honest, because my a certain parent was very, very strict and scary. I had to fight for that though as well, if that makes sense. I had
Yes,
to
it
fight
does.
for that. But listening to, sorry, darling, Crystal, is it?
Yeah.
It's made me reflect a little bit on my two, because my two girls have always been really, really close. But I've always supported both their plays. but I've always recognized, in a way, I suppose they're lucky and I've been lucky that they wanted to be together, they wanted to
Mhm.
play together. And my younger sibling ended up being with the older ones because I didn't want her to live. But because I recognize as well the developmental value of different age ranges,
Yeah.
this is why I encouraged it. But then
Mhm.
also it makes me feel like, oh shit, you know, I did that adult thing of take your sis, look after your sis. Do you know what I mean? But they were happy to do that as well because
Yeah.
the way I evolved their development and happiness and play was I would just literally bring a load of the older siblings' friends round, and they'd all play and look after each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know what you're saying is having that responsibility and blah blah blah, but sometimes as well, as long as it's obviously not you're having to do the parent role, because that shouldn't be, but it's also nice because you got to, you know, to take the positive feedback of that is, wow, what an amazing person you were and an amazing influence on their life growing up. Do you get what I mean?
Mm. Oh yeah. In that lens, I
And
can
that,
accept that. So thank you.
yeah, and
And
Yeah.
it's
here's what I noticed as you two are talking. This is going a little bit beyond play, but I'm noticing a trait that I have as a trauma survivor. And here it is. I'm going to say it. When Crystal was talking about something typical and atypical, I went through this thing about, can I challenge Crystal? And I said, yes, I can, because we're friends. But I
Oh.
also had this thing about, how can I say this? Feeling like there are judgments out there and
Mm.
they're going to apply to me. And so I wanted to clear my
Mhm.
space so that as an adult, a 77-year-old adult, I can play right now with both of you. And Nick, here's what I observed with you. And if it was pure projection or whatever, let me know. But I heard you talking about your freedom to play and your time with your daughters and the judgment that you took in or perhaps took in was, oh, wait a minute. Oh, dear.
yeah, because
Maybe putting my daughters together like that wasn't fair to them. So what I want to say and pull this out here for us as a principle for me as a trauma survivor is that I was so judged negatively. I was so shamed and expected to be perfect
Mhm.
in the presence of adults that there was no childhood play in that. A child perfectionism is the first step towards shame, or perfectionism is the pure result of shame. So I couldn't when I would you guys will love this when I would run home after a day outside. I mean, I'd eat lunch because I packed my PB&J sandwich out in the woods, or I'd stop in at a neighbor's and she'd give me Kool-Aid or something, you know. I took care of myself all day from the minute I was free. When I would run to the door to be there in time for dinner, I would always say out loud, funds,
gone.
Fun.
fun is up.
Yeah.
Oh.
The fun's up. That's it. End of play, end of fun. And my mother thought that was kind of funny and cute, but because of her mental illness, she was unable to notice that once I walked through the door, that playful, fun-loving, tree climbing, log jumping, skipping stone kid couldn't come in the door. Immediately, I was using my skills to read, how is my mother? Is she stable right
Mhm.
now? How is my father? Is he tipping toward being angry? So immediately I became the psychologist for the family. There's no play in that. So look at the extreme. Did you guys experience any of that where with adults? Yeah, what do you think, Nick?
Well, to be honest, you'd always have to come home at tea time. And tea time was very, very stressful for me. To the point where it gave me an eating disorder for many, many years. Um,
No
and
surprise. Do you want to say something? You don't have to, but do you want to say something about that? Because of the stress. The tea
I
time should be
would,
playful, right? But it wasn't
oh,
for you.
it was horrible. I would sit and chew a piece of meat for an hour, and I'd be penalized greatly for just being, and I was like, I just didn't like the texture, I didn't like the whatever. And I think a lot of it also was the stress around the tea table anyway.
Mhm.
um and as I say, I would just, and I'd be like, come on, eat, eat, eat. And I'd be like, but I don't want to. And I put a piece of meat in my mouth. And before I know it, I've got about 10 chunks of meat, and I'm going,
Wow.
oh,
I
Yeah.
hear you. I hear you, Nick. Does that make sense to you, Crystal,
Oh,
in any
yeah.
way? Talk
And,
about that,
you
please.
know, my mom did a lot with us. Um, I mean, she would even take when juice came in cans, like what were they, 46-ounce cans. She would take the wrapper off and use a can opener, take like jump rope, the jump rope, and she taught us how to walk on the cans. I mean, just
Oh,
things. Yeah, we knew how to play jacks. We knew how to, just um electronics weren't out then, and we were encouraged to go outside. However, there was the responsibility to care for others, and um it got to a point where going outside for me became uh almost kind of icky, because at that time we wore halters, and by the time I was maybe 10 or 11, I started developing, and the men, our neighbors, so the things they would say or ask you to do something inappropriate.
really?
I hear you, Crystal. What I'm hearing from both of you, and I'm sad, Crystal, I mean, I'm having feelings about that. The sexualization of young girls, and I'm sure young
Yeah.
boys too, horrible, and there was no protection from that. What I'm hearing beneath this from both of you, and feeling it for myself too, is I didn't, as a trauma surviving child, have anybody. Nick, Crystal, I don't think you guys did either. Did we have anybody that we could say, I'm scared? I'm scared when my father comes into my bedroom at night. I'm scared. Or I want to say this to Nick. Nick, my mother was she didn't finish high school. She was from a family of alcoholics, and she was taking care of the family also. And she was mentally ill. What she did was she would find out something through Ladies Home Journal, like that kids should take these gargantuan vitamin pills. I mean, she got vitamin pills for adults and she gave them to us as kids. Couldn't swallow it. And I now know that, of course, I couldn't swallow it because a lot of the abuse that I was enduring, I felt I was being
Oh,
choked. I,
oh,
yes, I felt I couldn't breathe. I felt like people were in my space. And so she'd give me this huge vitamin and demand that I take it. And so I thought, as a little 3, 4-year-old, I'm being smart. I pretended I swallowed it. When she wasn't looking, I spit it into my hand. And then I dumped it on the floor, thinking it was going to roll underneath something. Well, after weeks, they didn't all roll underneath something, and I got punished. What is wrong with you? I'm not going to go through the screaming, but
yeah.
it was my fault because I was not appreciating the money she had spent on me to make sure that I ended up healthy. What I couldn't even begin to articulate to myself was, can't swallow. I'm scared to death to swallow. And even as an adult, I'm telling you what I need, just what I say to pharmacists is tell me how big, with me, Nick, tell me how big the pill is. Because if it's too big, I'm not going to be able to swallow it. Can you break it down? One time I got an antibiotic where I had to take 10 pills because I couldn't swallow this horse pill. When women get pregnant and they're given all these pills,
Oh,
OMG, it's assumed that we don't have any problem swallowing. But you know what? This is a metaphor too. When our throats are closed up and closed off, it leads to what you're talking about, Nick, the trauma of eating disorders. It also leads to the trauma of our voice being shut off and
But
shut.
mhm,
also, but also, I have to say, inaccurate breathing, because I've studied Qigong, which is a martial art,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
for Tai Chi. And me and my instructor were in the woods, because obviously a lot of it, because I do meditation and stuff as well, it's all about deep breathing, this, that, and the other. And me and my tutor, my master, were out in the woods, and he just had tears, because obviously I think when you become a certain level of healing, you feel the other person, and I know I do.
mhm,
I think he felt my pain of,
mhm,
even
Yes.
as an adult, I haven't been able to breathe effectively
Yes.
because of the childhood trauma. And even now, you hold it all here when it should be here at your heart and at your lungs.
Yes.
But you're stuck in your throat to the point that you can't talk. You're stuck in
mhm.
here that you feel like you're choking, you can't breathe. And then
Yes.
and when I did finally go, it was just such a massive emotional relief,
Yes.
Yeah.
because
I hear you.
store it in our bodies at the end of the day, the trauma of everything, we store it in our bodies. And as I say, to do that deep breath, and then it made me recognize, shit, I'm holding my breath here. I'm not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then
You're
it was
right.
like,
And that movie
what
that
am I
came out, Nick, I was just thinking of a movie that we might all have seen. It was called Waiting to Exhale. Crystal, you remember that? Why?
Uh,
Yes. Why on earth did they entitle that film Waiting to Exhale? Well, to me, it was because so many of us
well,
hold our breath. How many of us hold our breath? I have to remind myself
yeah.
to
Yeah.
breathe, to
Mhm.
breathe. And that is a basic life skill, right? That we all need to have. But a child, and this is why working with young children is so crucial, because you, I, Crystal, we can feel it when a child is unsafe. I can feel it when a child takes control. I had this little Amy who would say to me, I was teaching her swimming, and she said to me, "Is this perfect? Am I perfect?" And my heart would break, and I wanted to just embrace her. We were not at that point yet, but I just wanted to embrace her and say, "Sweetie, you are so perfect to me. You are just perfect as you are." But she was so scared of not being acceptable unless she was perfect that she couldn't play. She couldn't play in the water.
Wow.
don't
Yeah,
you
Yeah.
Crystal, what were you
I,
going to say, sweetie?
I want to also acknowledge our listeners who are also on Facebook. So we have Miss Stephanie and Miss Carrie. So thanks for joining us.
Hey, Steph.
Um, yeah. I I'm known as the auntie who will play with all the kids. If you're gonna buy my ticket and you want me to go with you, to go visit your grandchildren, I'll go. And I just want children to feel like they, don't have barriers. If they want to walk on the sidewalk on the edge,
Oh,
or, or just jump, down 2 stairs, let them do it.
let them be.
My 10-month-old granddaughter, she likes to, Denise is also joining us on Facebook.
Oh, Denise, hello, sweetie. We're talking about traumatized children and play. And if there's one
Yeah.
of us that knows how to welcome children who other people don't want because they're so hard, Denise welcomed these kids in Head Start
Yeah.
forever so that they felt like they could play. So Denise, I want to hear from you too. What Crystal's telling us about is she was the auntie, everybody, the Nona, everybody wanted to hang with because she would get silly. She would get silly. How did you have that in you? Nick, how did you have it in you? How did I have it in me to know that I could be silly when I couldn't be
I
silly?
believe it was what I needed to release, a while back, and now feeling comfortable enough that I can do it without judgment. I would wear suits when I was the coordinator on campus children's centers, and I'd be on the floor with the suits on because I want children to feel comfortable in their play, and just as they should. Like I was telling you, my 10-month-old granddaughter, she goes over every day to a bookcase and pulls all the books out. And, I tell my son and, his fiance, I know that may be a little troublesome for you to clean it up, but she's engaging. And that's what they need to do.
And part of our job,
Oh, okay.
education.
She's at the Zoom.
Oh, okay. Talking
Denise
about,
said, okay, that was her in the Zoom on the call, but now she's on Facebook.
oh, good. So Denise, if you want to join us so we can wave at you and talk with you, please do. And if you're not comfortable doing that, that's fine. We're just glad you're here, honey. And what we're talking about now, and Nick is going to say something, is here's what I'm seeing as crucial. Folk who work in early childhood have had this conversation how many times with parents that play is not just a child's work. Play is how a child learns to live on earth.
Yes.
Through play, a child learns her boundaries. She learns to connect with other people safely. She learns how much risk she can take. Can I, how far out can I go on a swing? How high can I jump? How high can I stalk on those, not stalk, but prance
Yeah.
on those stilts? And how deeply can I dive into the water? And how long can I hold my breath underwater and still be safe? Play is a way of negotiating life. And if children are not allowed to play, we don't learn that stuff. Nick, when you're
No.
working with a parent who doesn't get it about play is the way a child learns. What's just one thing you say to a parent to help her get or him get that that's what a child learns through?
Sorry, I'm trying to get something up that I've written. And you've disappeared.
It's okay. We'll
My
come back to
no,
you.
okay,
Okay.
no, my thing is, and it's something that Crystal has pointed out, a thing that I have been challenging everybody, the whole world, everybody, is simply letting the child be. simply letting the child be, to be able to breathe, to be in their own space, and to enjoy their sense of wonder of the world that they need to explore.
Now, Nick, as you're saying that, I love that. And yet imagine how that might come across to a parent who's a traumatized adult, who was traumatized as a child.
Yeah.
How on earth do we work with that parent? And I was a traumatized parent. How on earth do I work with myself? How on earth do I work with parents who say, that child not going to be safe? If that child can just be herself.
Yeah. But to be honest, I'm getting this in communities. I've had it in education. I've had parents. I've had it everywhere. And then, because people don't trust the process of a child, of let them be, let them breathe, let them explore. They don't trust the process because as adults feel like we have to intervene, we have to be providing, we have to be this, that, and the other. And it's like, actually, all we need to be is a safe person to be to explore senses of wonder in the world.
And yet, if go ahead, Chris.
And create those safe learning environments and let the children engage. You know, the manipulatives are out there. And I also want to address something that I speak about when I talk about play. I speak about the, in education, unfortunately, we have these jargons, and one that I really dislike is called the 3 Bs, the big black boy. I'm not going to say Johnny because Johnny gets picked on too much. So Stephen may really enjoy big bodily play, but still having fun. However, Sean may also be doing that, but because the teacher may not understand cultural relevance, cultural linguistics, Steve is going to be labeled, oh, he's too big, he's going to hurt everyone. Not understanding that may be the play in his culture. Yeah. We have to get to know our families, get to know the children. And Holly Elissa helped me with this one. Be more curious and less judgmental.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for reminding us that Crystal, Nick, Emma, and Denise. Look, there, Walt Whitman, the poet in the United States, who was a very big groundbreaker. For one thing, he was clearly homosexual, and he was out front about that long before people did that. I mean, there were all kinds of people who were LGBTQ, but they hid it. He didn't. Anyway, what happened with Walt Whitman was he had a stroke. And he, people looked at him askance, and he said 4 words, which I have never forgotten. He said, and it's so wonderful for trauma survivors, be curious, not judgmental. Walk into the woods with a child, and if that child is fascinated by a centipede, stop right there. How many possible life lessons can come from a centipede? Can I walk like a centipede? How do they do that?
Yeah.
Well, does a centipede have a mate? Does he have a family? How, all the questions, boom, they're just coming out of everywhere. There it is. Be curious, not judgmental. That's what we do with children. That's what we're helping, hopefully, parents get. But when the parent has had no freedom to be curious, control is the C that prevails. Control is the C. And what I find challenging to myself at age 77 is that when I get scared, it's often a nonverbal on It's not,
Mm,
it comes from my body. Do you know what I'm saying? My
mhm,
body is starting
mhm,
to tighten up. I was visiting with a person who's going through a very hard time, loss of, she just lost a crucial person in her life, and she's got a chronic illness that's deadly. And she called me over to just be with her. And I can do that. And yet, here's what happened. I was so tight in my body, picking up her tension and her panic, that I had to talk myself through. Sweetheart, be curious, not judgmental. It's you're here. No, this person is not safe right now, but I'm safe within myself. I chose to talk myself through it. And then I found
mhm,
my voice coming back into my body. What I was doing the whole time was like trying to create a safe sanctuary around her so she could come back and be present in the moment rather than all over the
mhm.
place. And of course, I was with my mother again. And of course, I was competent, but here's what was new. She and I, this woman, I love her, and we started playing. I said, you know what? It's a curious thing, but if we can start singing, we're going to be okay. And I don't give a sweet bippy what we sing. Let's just sing it. So this woman from the
But
Midwest is going, because she's panicked. And she says, I've been working on the railroad. And I'm like right in there all the long day. And we start laughing. And what happens, and this play does this for adults as well as kids. Once I start, Nick, you got it. Once I start breathing again,
yeah,
Crystal, once I feel like I can be responsible for myself, I can play. I don't have to worry about anybody else. Then I can start breathing. And the shortest, actually 60 seconds, you guys know this research, 60 seconds of smiling
yes,
releases endorphins, and my chest starts to open up. So here we are talking in depth, and I'm grateful for this. I want to check our time. We got a little less than 15 minutes, and I'd love to hear
yeah.
from you too. I want to summarize where I feel we are and hear from you guys. The question is, play is tough for adults who are traumatized. We know intellectually how crucial it is, but to let ourselves be free to play, when freedom meant there could be somebody stalking me,
Yeah.
somebody stalking me, that made it really tough. I think Crystal just put a different screen up here. Thanks so much. So, what I want to
Yeah,
ask you
just
guys,
sharing. Hmm. Go ahead.
thank you, sweetie. I just want to ask you guys, when it comes to having had trauma and being adults and hearing this promise to traumatized adults, I will learn to play and have fun in my life. What is the process through which a traumatized, rigid, holding her breath, looking out all the time as hypervigilant, how can we begin the process of playing when that has been something that has been verboten for us? Crystal, do you have anything about that? Or Denise?
I find ways, and I would like Denise to share because I think if you would like, what she does is just so um heartwarming and also gives children a beautiful opportunity to see life that they may not ever experience in the way someone's going to give them that freedom without saying, step back, don't touch. I love the opportunity to go to an island in Detroit. It's called Belle Isle. Really odd the way it's right where the Detroit River is. There's a planetarium, it's just beautiful. And I pay extra on my tabs to go into the municipal parks, and that's one. But to see nature in its way and to take my grandchildren and just let them explore. The deer will come up to our car. It says not to feed them, but they can have a bread or a cracker or a carrot. But it's just something that some children will never ever experience. That's play for me.
It's no accident that it's called, that we call nature Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us felt safer in nature?
Oh, completely. And one of my heroes reading one of his books is Richard Louv, The Last Child in the Woods.
Yes.
I think I put something up on Facebook the other day, and something I was working on was, please don't let this child be the last one of the woods, because again, because I'm into healing and different therapies, nature is its best healer, and nature is full of loose parts, it's full of play opportunities, and well, the world itself is an inspirational playground, but it's how as adults let children interact within their environment.
Crystal, you're holding up. What you doing, girl?
I want those on Facebook to see you all.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
I don't know.
Hi, friends on Facebook. We'll get the technology
no.
figured out.
Let me start it again. Keep
Okay.
going.
Well, this thing about Mother Nature and what Nick is saying, and I if Denise can join in, I'd love to hear her, because Denise has this Pied Piper magical way of taking storybooks and bringing a group of children with their parents alive. I mean, she's got kids of all different developmental stages, and those kids are right in there touching things. They're not hurting anybody, but they're touching, they're exploring, they're having all this sensory play stuff, and she's able to do that. She's able to bring the outdoors indoors, which is an art that we all have to do, not have to do, but choose to do. But what I'm feeling here is the question: how can trauma survivors ourselves, let's just look at ourselves, how can we learn to play when we've been taught we are not worthy of play, or that play is for children? It's not for us. We're responsible. There's a Protestant song that says, work, for the day is ending. Work, work, work. And there's another song about work your fingers to the bone.
Yeah.
What do you get? Bony fingers. When I did an addiction analysis, I don't know if you guys have done this, but I did a family tree. And under each person's name, I listed what was that person addicted to. Now, it was easy to put in, well, easy for a couple of generations. Well, okay, so this grandfather was an alcoholic. Okay, so this grandfather was a pedophile. Though that wasn't easy, but at least I could list it.
Yes.
The thing that surprised the bejesus out of me, and yet it didn't surprise me at all, is that everybody on both sides of the family was addicted to work. Everybody was addicted to work. And what happens is, the message is, we can't play until we get our work done. And guess what? Adults, our work is never done. Our work is never done. I see people in education working 28 hours a day. Because why? And I had to watch this for myself, and it certainly came true during COVID and being shut down during COVID. When I'm alone by myself, can I allow myself to feel the grief, the rage, and the other feelings that were shut down in me so much because as a child, I didn't get to play. Can I do that? And there is something that stops us from playing. My favorite guy on Play, and you guys might know him, is Stuart Brown. Stuart Brown, Dr. Stuart Brown, he's like 85, 86 years old. You know what? He's got his office in a treehouse. I think that's just so cool. He says, and he always asks a question, which I love to do when I'm working with people on Play, like adults on Play. He asks the question, what is the opposite of play? What's the opposite of play? And guess what? Say it again, depression. You got it, Nick. And yet, how about that? How about that, Crystal? Because guess what? Most people say the opposite of play is work. And so we know inside our souls, if we're working hard, we can avoid the true side of us that comes out when we play. Why would we be so afraid of the true side of ourselves coming out when we
Because
play?
I think we've been made as people ashamed. Play is still, even in our society, seen as frivolous. It's still seen as unimportant. But I think the main thing is ashamed to be foolish, ashamed to make mistakes, and ashamed to just simply even be, because you are to conform to what society dictates.
Yeah, I hear you. Crystal, what do you feel about that?
I wholeheartedly agree. And I, dress up as Cat in the Hat, and I would go to schools and read. And I had one teacher, here I am bringing this joy to children. And this is before I had the braces, so, I could really engage. And this one teacher tells me, oh, I did my dissertation on Dr. Seuss, because, he was really racist. And a lot of his books, I understand that. But do we talk about everything that's racist? No. Just like you learned last week, why people of color, we don't say picnic. We say we're going to a barbecue or outing. So I think the more we can learn from one another, the less intrinsic biases we'll see, because it's just the unknown. And so when he said that, and he said it in front of the kids, and a lot of them had recognized the Cat in the Hat from videos or books, and they thought I was really the Cat in the Hat, because I'm gonna do it up with all the makeup and the whole costume. Let them have fun.
That I have a trauma therapist that talks about this. He says the big secret is that we believe that life is supposed to be hard work. That once we got over the certain age, we can't have fun anymore. And the only way we can have fun is by self-medicating, which would mean drinking, which would mean unsafe sex, which would mean like doing all kinds of like substances.
Gummies and weed.
Right. Yeah, and I inhaled, my friends. I'm telling you the truth. I inhaled because you know I wanted to experiment with all of that stuff. But here's another thing I want to say. When I was, when LSD and those psychedelic drugs became available, and they were available,
Yeah.
I was afraid to try LSD because I had seen mental illness in my family. And I thought if I take a tab, I might become like my
Yeah.
grandmother's, like my mother. And so I would do experiment with other drugs where I had a certain sense of control, but I was terrified of losing control. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because obviously, because I'm into healing and stuff like this, people have said, "Oh, magic mushrooms," and I'm like, "I'm no, I can't do it."
Mhm.
I because the experiences that I've heard, it's like I need to be, as you said, Holly, I need to be in control, and the idea of
Hmm.
totally losing that control is really scary to, and as I say, and because of a psychosis, it can actually
Yeah.
also
Yes.
put in people. It's like, nah, I just want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hear you,
And that's
sweetie.
Yeah.
that's fine for me. I'm 60, and when I turned 30, I was like, okay, maybe I'll try a little weed. Didn't happen. Okay, 40. Nah, 50. I asked a friend, and he said he was a police officer. He said, oh no, because I can see you going to the police and say, look what they gave. So now I'm 60. I still have not had whatever you want to call it, marijuana, weed, whatever. But I consider myself jovial, and I am not shaming anyone. I just can't stand that skunk smell.
Be
I,
honest,
I hear
it's
you, girl.
also, yeah, it's a lot stronger than it used to be years ago. They play around with it so much more. Even like things like ecstasy and stuff. I mean, years ago it used to be pure, but nowadays they mix it with so much stuff that it makes
yeah.
it a lot more scarier to sort of go, oh, I don't know what you're putting in it.
So,
And
so my friends, I just am looking at the clock, and I'm seeing that it's
Oh,
probably time for each one of us, if we can, to just reflect for a moment, if that's your process, or just spurt it out if that's your process. What is one heartfelt, true thing you've learned about yourself as a traumatized person and your relationship with play? What's one thing you've learned that really is true for you? Yeah, Nick, go for it, honey.
Nick, go first. What
being
is
that,
it?
just basically, and it's quite simple, really. Just being that safe person that that child can explore the world, their own desires, interests, instincts, but being that safe person to be able to go, yeah. Um, but because one of my favorites is Plato and Rousseau. There was a paper that was combined together, and it's about being that safe person to go, yeah, nah, maybe not, but if you want to have a go, let's have a go, and let's just see what happens. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, I think that is the most important thing that I've ever taken through my studies, my own stuff.
And Nick, that's
Yeah.
so valuable because the one of the people that wrote the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, Dr. John Medina, when I asked him, what's the most crucial thing we need to give, to provide, to have with traumatized children? I thought he was going to say unconditional love, but instead he said what you're saying. If Safety. Child has to feel safe.
But
And guess what?
also,
Adults do too.
also without judgment, safety without
Yeah,
Judgment.
yeah.
I'm with you, honey. Thank you so much. Perfect. That, I mean, listen to me. Perfect is a applause. Good. I hear you, girl. I
You're
hear you.
good.
Yeah, it's okay. Chris, what about you, sweetie? What's, as a traumatized person, what, I'm not talking so much here about helping children play, but what, although that's crucial, what about yourself? How can you play?
Excuse me. I love just being me. And being me means that I don't have to ascribe to anybody else's identity. One, everybody else's identity is already taken. So just being myself. So if I like to wear a top that matches the earrings and the glasses, so what? It's me. That's play. And that I don't have to be apologetic. And I remember there was a time when I would go into my closets, plural, but I'm getting it, some of it's going away. Um, I would think, who's going to be at work today? Who's going to see me? Now I don't care. I want to be me. And there's no shame in it.
Oh, that's
None.
beautiful.
That is beautiful. Not only is there no shame in it, I mean, that's powerful. There's no shame in it. And as Nick said, there's no judgment in it. There is freedom in it. And the whole point for me of play is to discover what I love, what I can do, what I can give back. And so I'm going to share with you guys a real simple story. I live in New England, and it's not used in the past. Of course, we don't have any climate change, but if we did, we would have an understanding of why the weather has changed so radically. I mean, I was just last week driving to a meeting, and I looked down and I saw these other cars lifting up
Yeah.
in the flood. This was a national disaster area right here where I live. And that didn't happen. There was rain, but it wasn't like that. What I'm trying to say
Yeah.
here is that, let me say hi to my son. Cole, I'm recording. I'll be with you in 10 minutes. Love you. Um, what I want to say is this. I love taking hikes. It's play for me because I've got my camera with me and I'm like recording everything, or I see a deer on the path and the deer's looking at me. I'm looking at the deer. You know what I did the other day? I just started singing to the deer. I started singing.
Oh,
I thought, you know what? Maybe that's another way we can communicate because talking does some things, but I'm still singing away. And the deer has got ears going like this, and I'm going like it was. And then this person with her headphones on comes, but still, it was a moment. Why am I talking about this? Because I like this long, like 3 hour hike, and it's hot outside, and I can see that there's a storm gathering, but all of a sudden the storm doesn't just gather. It kaboom, kaboom, the thunderbolts down, and there ain't no place for me to go. If I go under a tree, the trees are dripping because the rain is coming down so hard. And so I went into a state which children that are traumatized know so well. Without even having words for it, I knew my mother telling me, don't you dare get messy. Don't
Yeah.
you dare get messy. Nope. Don't you track anything into the house. Don't you go barefooted and get tar from the street. Don't. Should. What I felt in that moment, because I felt this torrent, this was, I could see the sheets of rain going over the meadows. I said, I'm gonna have me a good time. I'm gonna have me a good time. And it was my own mud day, and I'm out there, and then my yellow sneakers are getting all like smashed up with the mud. I'm saying bring it down. I'm sure that my private parts are showing through my what I've got, but I don't give a sweet bit because I am like sitting And in the rain, I'm singing. And what a glorious feeling. I'm happy again.
Happy again.
And then there we go, honeys. That was the gift of saying, sweetheart, it's okay to be right there in the moment. And Nick, I don't have to worry about anybody judging me. And if they do, it's their business, not mine. And Crystal, I don't have to worry about what anybody's gonna say. Because they can
Right.
say what they want. I'm doing this for me.
I don't care.
There's a
Oh,
Sicilian way of saying that. But so, my
yeah.
friends, we need to wrap. But I was want to ask Crystal and Nick, is there anything you would love, or even I can't see if Denise is saying anything.
Denise logged off, but Alyssa's on,
Oh,
Vanessa.
Elisa.
Yeah, Elisa, Vanessa, Shantori. So we have some regular listeners who are on Facebook.
I love it.
So
Did Yvonne make
thank
it?
you.
Awesome sauce. Is Yvonne there? She was trying to get in.
I don't see it. No.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. So if you guys want to type in or just write us, how can we love on, partner with, become our own true selves by laughing at myself? I'm not talking about demeaning myself when I laugh. When I start laughing at
No.
myself, like, OMG, I'm doing it again. I get this laugh that's just so liberating. So I want to thank you guys. And next week, Monday, 8 o'clock, if you're where Nick is over across the sea in the UK, of
Yes.
3 o'clock, if you're where Denise and Crystal and I are, if you're on the East Coast of the US, we have people coming from South Africa and
Yeah.
India. And so
All
we
over.
welcome you. And Crystal, what would you like to say to wrap up, or Nick too, if there's anything you want to say goodbye with?
Oh, this has been so joyful. I appreciate you joining us and sharing in because most often we don't understand the strength in our stories and how they can ignite a chapter in someone else. So I appreciate you. Yes.
Mm.
Definitely. And again, as you know, Holly, very appreciative of you, of your work, and appreciation of my work. And at the end of the day, for a fruitful life, let's be able to breathe. Let's have less judgments. Let's just be good to each other and keep in touch with our inner child.
You got it, honey. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Elisa.
Yeah.
Crystal, you got somebody else you want to acknowledge?
Valerie's watching, and Elisa says we appreciate you both. So we appreciate our consistent listeners. Please share. This will be uploaded. We have new behind the scenes marketing individuals. So be patient with us. Things are happening. I just have to laugh, otherwise I'll cry.
Good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
yeah,
learning the ropes technologically. And so last week's program is up, it's out. We can send it to you. It was really powerful. And
yeah.
this week's program, we'll get it up and out as soon as we can. Please share it with people. And something else just came to me, but it just flitted out my brain.
You
And
too.
so,
With
so
that,
what the hey?
yeah.
What
Oh,
the hey?
we'll be. Oh, also, Holly Elissa will be the keynote speaker this week for the Iowa AEYC, and we will be there. I'm excited to join her. So, um, I'll take, you know me, I'll take lots of pictures and we'll post it. And you all will be in our heart with us. So thank you.
Thank you, my friends. And remember, if there's ever a point where you feel unsafe, wherever point where you feel like, oh, I got to talk with somebody, you please can do that. First off, you can get in touch with us one-on-one. We're not therapists, we're fellow travelers. I want to be clear about that. But we're glad to share and listen. And then, as Crystal posted, there is that warm line where you can call people that have been through stuff and just say, I'm having a hard time. Will you listen to me? And you know they will say yes. And Nick, we got one question for you as we close out. Do you know if across the UK or in any part of the UK, there is something called a warm line where somebody can call in that's having a hard time and just talk without being judged? It's the kind of thing we said today. Just be able to be myself, tell the truth, not be judged. And that's freedom. And I'm wondering if other countries are starting to have these lines. We've all countries have had hotlines. If I'm going to be suicidal, somebody's going to be there, but that is a whole different type of response. People need
Yes.
to find out, am I going to hurt myself? Am I going to hurt somebody else? But the warm lines are really for, we all have got pain. We've all got sorrow. Let's help each other through. So Nick, if you find out, let us know. And we'll post that if the UK has a warm line where people can call. And some of them are 24/7. Some of them are restricted hours. Some of them are geographically based. And some states in the United States don't have warm lines. So let us know. My friends, we love you. We support you. We really want the best for you to be your badass self. Mm-hmm. Be your badass self. And we'll see you, I hope, and be with you and hear you
Yes.
next week at this time. Love you. And I'm going to stop the recording. And Nick, thank you so much, Crystal. Always my dear pleasure. Fare thee well. Bye.